Hi, it's Alan here. I'm just going to do a quick tutorial on some techniques I use to do recordings and takes lined up with music. So what we're going to do is pretend that we've got a music with some constant beat of, just to make it easy, 10 frames per second, 1 beat per second. So I'm not actually going to play the music, I'm just going to pretend there's a beat every second. And so the question is, how do you get the movements to line up? And you might think, oh, why is this so hard? Well, if I turn on the webcam just momentarily and I move around, what you might be able to see is there's a lag. So as I move my head around, there's a bit of a lag going on there, and the same's true of dragging. I'm dragging my cursor around, I'm not sure if it's coming through, but there's a bit of a lag, and so then the problem is, well, how do you get it to line up exactly on these 1 second intervals when you've got this lag? And so I'm going to talk about some techniques for doing that. Hopefully they're useful to someone. So I'm just going to turn off the camera, save a bit of CPU. So what I'm going to do first is we're going to record this character, and I'm going to be strumming the guitar. And what I want to do is strum up and down at a certain rate at 1 per second, just so we get a strum every second. So what I might try and do is I'll kick off a recording. 3, 2, 1, away we're going, and I'm going 1, 2, 3, up and down, and that should do. You may have noticed I've got it zoomed in a little bit here. If we can grab this over here somewhere, oh well. So zoom back out again, scroll back over, and so hands going up and down, and it's sort of nowhere near in sync, but there was a little bit of setup time when I wasn't strumming, so I'm just I can grab the edge and pull it over and trim it off and slide that back. And this is actually one way to try and get things to line up, is just to trim off the edge. So I'm going to get the hand starting up there, strum down a little bit too early, strum back up, down again. So what I'm going to do, take a little bit more off that edge, and so when I trim this edge, it's actually removing, deleting it, and then when I grab it in the middle and drag, I can sort of slide it backs and forwards. So it makes a difference whether you grab this edge or this edge, because it actually adjusts that particular edge. And so if I want to move everything back a little bit, I actually grab, so if I play it now, it's closer to being lined up, but I had a problem here. No, it's not too bad there. So even just a playback, it's hard to judge. And so you have got this setting up here to set the playback speed slower, and you can also set the record speed slower. And so I might sort of play back, and it's done the first strum, the second strum's closer, the third strum is a little bit late. Okay, so this strum is a bit late, but this one, oops, wrong button. This one back here is going to turn off the dragger. When the dragger's armed, you can't actually see it as easily, but if I come back here and I start single stepping through the frames, let's go backwards a little bit more. You can see really the strum, oops, too far. The strum started a little bit early, so how can I do that? Well, what you can do is start doing tricks like if I come into the middle here and do an edit, split. I've now got 2 recordings, and what I can do is I can take this one and slide it across a little bit. Because this one's on top, it'll override the old one, and so now I can get the speed. So round about here on this one is where this one, so I need to slide it over just a touch more, so it lines up with this here. So okay, so we're going to go strum, and then strum, and so you can see that if it was too big a gap, I can slide these things next to each other and overlap them a little bit. So If they're too far apart, I can bring them together by splicing, as long as things sort of seem to still line up okay and it doesn't jump too much between these two videos here, 2 steps there. And in this case it seems to be okay. But I've got a different problem at the beginning now. I've got a gap at the beginning, and this first strum, so there's a strum at 2 seconds. Let's play it back. There's a strum there. But what about back here? Well, back here there's no recording. If I extend this one back out, it actually, when I extend it in, it's only using a subpart of the full thing. It hasn't actually discarded it. If I pull it back on this edge, it'll actually recover whatever it had there before, which is both good and bad in different situations. So then we've got the first drum at 1 second, next drum at second, next drum at 3rd second. So you can see this way. But then what happens if I actually sort of said, oh, well, this drum here, I actually want that on second 4 for whatever reason. I want to hold it. So what I'll sometimes do is I'll put the cursor directly under number 3, and when I click to drag, I can line that, because I've now got my cursor directly under number 4, and so I've moved it exactly 1 second. And so I should be able to see this drum coming down here. Cool. But what about this gap? Because I pull these two things apart, and I've now got a gap, and I don't have any thing there. And what will happen is if I extend this edge out, because there is actually recording, it'll bring back that recording data. And so you actually get the strum, and then suddenly realize, oops, I didn't want that. So it's jumping back to this new recording. So it's extending out this edge is not what I wanted in this case. What you have to do instead is something such as, where is it? Hold take. So I've put the cursor there, right near the end, and I've done a hold take. And if I zoom in, I've then got this little take, and what I can do is drag it out. To over here, and got the strum down at 2 seconds, and as you can see, I'm holding here, it's just not moving. And so by doing a splice and then taking the last frame and doing a hold take, I can effectively extend that one out, which will be extending what the value was at that point in time, which is different than if I grab this edge and pull it out, because it'll actually recover whatever the recording. When I trimmed it, it didn't actually delete it. It just only using a part of that recording. I don't know how to explain that very well. But the hold take then is useful to hold that hand position for that period of time. And so that's one way, is to use the splice to overlap them, to bring them closer together. And if you're pulling them further apart, then you possibly need to do a hold take, which you then extend to actually join these two bits apart that you've actually moved apart. And so that's a way you can actually get a drag to be sort of better timed. But you'll notice during this stage here, it's just perfectly still, and so it may not look quite as natural. And so it's not necessarily a perfect technique. And you can see the strum and back up and hold until, and so forth, because we moved that strum to the 4th second. So that's one way of doing it. What I wanted to do though was show another way of doing it without using drags. The problem with drags is they're a little bit inaccurate, but you can drag them around, you can splice them like that, you can glue it all back together, so you certainly can use drags. But if I'm going to do very precise sort of movements, sometimes I want to get it to move exactly. There is another approach using blends, which is what I'm going to show now. So I'm going to get rid of this. Zoom back and get rid of that part. So I've just got back to the base character again. I'm going to zoom back in, scroll back over. And so what I do in this case is I'm going to arm the dragger again, and I'm going to put the hand in whatever I think the starting position should be. And I'm going to do a very short record. 2, 1, record. Okay, so I've got a recording. Now, because I didn't actually move the dragger, the hand is just going to be still at that point. And that's what I wanted. And so it means if I extend this out or I shrink it back, whatever, it's still, the hand is still in one position. So I can do anything I like to this one, and I've got no problems about weirdness going on. But what I'm then going to do is to say, okay, well, I know where the position was at this time. I now want the hand to be down in a position below. And I do another recording on top. Chug, 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 chug. And the advantage of this sort of approach is I can zoom right in and I can trim. Now I've got that pretty well lined up on 1 second. I can come over to 2 seconds and bring this back. And so by doing this sort of approach, I've got very fine control over where it starts and ends. You might say, well, what's the point of this? I'm going to have the hand up, the hand down, the hand up. That looks ugly. And you'd be right. But this is where blends come in. Up in this top corner, so if I grab it on the bottom edge, I get this double-headed arrow, and that's how I can trim. But up in the top corner, you might notice that the icon is changing. This one's now got a finger with a double-headed arrow. And I can grab that and drag, and this is called blending. And what it does is instead of taking that new value, it actually slides from the old value, so this one down here, and it slides up until it's completely using the new value. And this grayed out area indicates it's now using completely the new value. And this area down here, see, is no longer gray, and it's because it's actually using a combination of this upper track and this lower track. So I'm going to take it this other corner and same thing. And so what it's doing is it's going to slide to the new point and then slide back again. And so if I come now and I start scrubbing through, it does a perfectly smooth slide there and a perfectly smooth slide back again. And I've managed to line that up perfectly with these 1 second barriers. So if I duplicate that, I can bring that over. I can do another one. And oops, wrong way. I'm going to take this base hand position and extend it out to wherever I want. Duplicate again. You can get the idea. So I can actually trim these each. Let's say I want this one to go a second later. Well, I just drag it along to wherever I want, but I just got to keep extending out that base position. Because the base position of the hands, if I didn't do a recording for the initial hand position, they'd be off in the A position, sticking out sideways. So let's have a look at this, see what this one comes out like now. So we're playing, doing stroke and back up, stroke and back up, stays in the up position, then slides to the other position and slides back again. So if down here, it's a little bit hard to grab these little handles sometimes, but if I grab, take that one, and so I've only got the first one slides, and let's say extend that edge, other edge out, then what will happen is the hand will go down and stay down. So this is another way, by recording a drag, like don't move it and try and get it timed perfectly, but just record the destination you want of it. You can use these blends, these little corner things that are in the corner, and use that to slide from the old value to the new value, and that will make a graceful, smooth transition. You might notice there's a little bit of a curve at the start and a little bit of a curve at the end, and so it will gradually speed up and then gradually slow down to ease in and ease out between the 2 points, which makes it a bit nicer as well. So it's not quite so jerky in the movements. But the real advantage is you've got absolute control over exactly when things are going to start, when they're going to end, and so forth. If you want this second one to be line up with exactly at 5 seconds, so it's going to be a longer 1 second downward stroke. And stop, hold there. So yes, that's the way you can use drags. You can also use it to, I frequently use this for recording XY positions over here and record different values in drags, and I had another video on that one, and that's how a character can move and slide around the screen. But this also works with head movements. So if we come back to the start here and I want to sort of get the head to move around, what I can do is I can do a first recording with the head in position 1. I don't really care how long that recording is, which is good because it's so laggy I couldn't possibly get it right. And then I'm going to come over here and I'm going to put the head in the other direction. I'm going to do another recording. Stop. And scroll in a little bit. And then I can just extend these out to any length position I want. And I'm going to try and line this directly up in 1 second as well. Actually, I'm going to go out to 3 seconds. And then I'm going to slide the head across. I'm going to do both ends, and so the idea is the head should nod backwards and forwards. The head tilts the other direction, and the head tilts back again. So you can do this with all sorts of parameters. You can do it with hand positions, you can do it with the camera. Turn that off for a bit of CPU. What else is there? I think that's probably enough, but it just gives you a bit of a feel of different ways you can get precise timings. You can try and drag and just do it real time, and then just slide things around and splice and join things back together and use holds to fill in gaps, and it does work. But the other way is just to record the final destination and then use this blend capability, go to the destination and back. And so I can do things like wave the arm up and down and control, and I'll know that the arm will arrive at exactly 4 seconds and then arrive back down at 5 seconds, and I don't have to get this all correct. So for example, let's go back and just do one more drag for the fun of it. I'm going to delete the old drags. And I'm going to, this time, I'm going to start with the hand down here. So just go to recording, and then I'm going to record the hand straight up. And I'm not really worrying about the length of time, I'm just getting recording. Whoops, sorry about that. And then go with the hand over here. And I'm just going to do another recording. And then I'm going to put the hand down over here. Just look at pretty weird. Do another recording. And then I'm going to take the first recording, which was the original position, and edit, duplicate. So now I've got the thing in exactly the same position as when it started. And then I can come along and say, okay, 1 second. I'm going to drag that one all the way out. Actually, I didn't need to duplicate it there, did I? I'm going to line up the start there, and then I'm going to go to 2 seconds and say that's a bit too far. Trim that back. And the one above, and then 3 seconds. Trim that back to there. Slide this one along. And 4 seconds. I don't know if that's going to work. So, okay, the other sort of thing for this one is, I see I've done it in a whole lot of different positions. I think I'm going to actually have to put the hand back to here and do a final record. There may be a way of doing it, I'm just not quite sure, so I'm just not going to experiment. I'm going to cheat. I'm going to get rid of that one. And the reason is I've got to layer these on top of each other. So 5 seconds, a little bit too long. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to extend this one out. It's actually not when they end that matters, it's when they start that matters, because they're going to get overridden. And I'm going to blend. 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 So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'm going to extend that top one afterwards. So what should happen is the hand should start in the starting position, and after exactly 1 second it should go up, and after 1 second it should go across. So let's see how this goes. So the hand is in its position, goes up and takes exactly 1 second to reach up. I've got this playing at quarter speed, so that's why, and then it goes across, and then will come down, and back to the start again. And so I've got precise hand movements to exactly the position I want at exactly the timing I want. Okay, that's probably enough. Hopefully that gives you a bit of a clue of how you can use blends to get precise timings, as well as being able to use drags to do precise timings by splicing, extending, or overlapping. Hopefully this was useful.